Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. So today we've got this Troy-bilt 21-inch self-propelled mower, and it's got a Honda motor on it. And the problem is it won't run unless the choke is on. And so actually what they've done is use some electrical tape to tape the choke in the on position so they can get your yard mowed. But we'll see if we can get this going. This is my neighbor's Troy-bilt 21-inch self-propelled lawnmower, and it's got a Honda motor on it, and it's the GCV 160. And those motors are known for their reliability, but also for their tricky carburetor. And one of the things that makes this carburetor the trickiest is the way they've got the gaskets on here. But we looked at it and figured out we'd try and just go ahead and clean the main jet out. What it was doing was it would start right up, but it would only run on choke. If you took the choke off, it would do a bunch of surging and then eventually would just choke out and die. So I went ahead and ran a little torch tip cleaner up through that main jet, and let's take it back outside and see how it does. Well, something happened with the audio on this, but basically it would run, but also only with the choke on. It was surging a whole bunch. So it's going to need a little better cleaning. So we'll go ahead and take it all apart. And wow, let's first look at this air filter, and that thing is pretty dirty. The carburetor comes off with these two bolts, and what makes it different than a lot of carburetors is instead of having studs, this has bolts. So when you take those two bolts out, basically all of the gaskets and the carburetor and everything else fall down behind that air filter box. So, wow, look at that carburetor. So let's hit this with some carb cleaner and get some of this grunge off this thing. Taking the gaskets off. Right off the bat, I see that I'm going to need some new gaskets. I could probably stick those on there, but there's not much sense in it. They're going to leak air. So I'll go ahead and order a set of gaskets and basically just clean the rest of this thing up. I'm going to go ahead and pull that main jet out of there, and you just need a decent flat screwdriver to do that. That's a very soft piece of brass, so you don't want to end up stripping that out. You won't ever get it out in that case. And that white corrosion you see on there, that's from water getting in that fuel. So probably they had fuel in it that sat over the winter, and as it evaporated, it left the water behind. I found the best way to do this is just go ahead and throw it in an ultrasonic cleaner. Under this screw is the idle jet, and there's really nothing you can remove on that, but you can run a cleaner down through it, or even throw some carb spray in there and use 30 psi of air with an air gun to clean that out. Then this is the fuel atomization tube that sits above the main jet. Got it all cleaned out as well. I think after doing this, we're going to get this thing running. Let's check it out. Okay, it's 2 days later, and we're ready to put this carburetor back on this machine. We've got it all cleaned up. We used the ultrasonic cleaner, and I ran wires through the main jet and the idle jet. So it should run. The reason it's a couple days later is I decided I wanted to put new gaskets on here. And the gasket set I bought came with an air filter, which is good because that air filter was definitely ready to be changed. But the reason I changed the gaskets and wanted to change gaskets is the old ones were just pretty beat up. And actually there were 2 gaskets missing. So I only had 2 gaskets. There were 4 that are needed. And I'll show those to you. So this gasket goes against the motor. You've got your little spacer block. this gasket is actually a heat shield that keeps the heat from the engine block boiling the fuel in your carburetor and causing issues. Then there is a metal spacer, and then a gasket for it to go against your air filter box. So the set I bought have 2 extra gaskets, and don't beat yourself up about where those go if you get this set. What these gaskets do is the early models of this engine, instead of this gasket material heat shield, used a metal heat shield, and on both sides of that metal heat shield you'll use these gaskets if you have that motor. Tried to go.
Sure did.
Okay. All right, so I got this carburetor all cleaned up. I got it put back on the machine, took it outside and started right up, but it kind of surged. And normally this would be the point where I take you out and show you how well it runs, but unfortunately it didn't do that. So I brought it back in here and I took this carburetor completely apart and cleaned it again, making sure it was 100% clean. Put it back on, and then it only would run with the choke on. So kind of going backwards, what I think has happened is I think that the seat in here for this float has gotten damaged, or what maybe was damaged. But anyway, as that float goes up, it's supposed to shut off the flow of this carburetor. That's not happening. And actually the entire tank drained through the carburetor overnight. So what I found was, you know, you can keep throwing good money after bad, I guess, and time is money. So for $18 on Amazon, I just got a new carburetor, and it just got here today. So let's put this on and see if this fixes the problem. So I actually read online, and a Honda tech said, clean the carburetor. If it doesn't work, don't mess with it anymore. Put a new carburetor on. So that's what we're doing. I've had pretty good luck with cleaning carbs on stuff, and at the beginning of this job, I honestly thought it would be about a 5-minute job. Clean the main jet, possibly have to clean the needle jet, and put this thing back together and get it back to the neighbor. So this carburetor looks identical. One of the things, if you're gonna buy one of these carburetors, make sure that the choke on it matches the choke. This carburetor has this stem on it, which this does also. A lot of these carburetors online don't have this post on there, and they will not work if yours needs that. Everything else looks identical. So let's get this thing installed. This kit also came with new fuel line, so I'll go ahead and throw that on there as well. So starting at the airbox, it gets one gasket, and there's a hole in that gasket, and you just have to line that up with the hole that's both in the carburetor and in the airbox. And then sliding those bolts through the carburetor. Make sure your choke lever is off and that little metal tab is towards the rear of the mower. That puts it in the right place to work with the choke. Then the little heat shield gasket goes on, and again, if you look at that, basically that heat shield covers all of the combustion area of the motor to keep from boiling the gas out of the bowl of the carburetor. Then the little spacer bracket goes on there, and like I said, it only goes one way, but the drain hole in the groove, which goes towards the carburetor, has to be at the bottom, obviously. And then the gasket that goes over that. And people complain about this process. The good thing about me taking this carburetor on and off here about 3 times, trying to clean it to make it run, is I got really good at putting it together. And I'll tell you what, I don't think it's that bad now that I've gotten some practice in. Don't use your impact to put these bolts in. You can just start them with it, but then go ahead and tighten them down by hand. If you torque one of those off, it's going to be a bad day in flat rock. The final part is go ahead and plug in the crankcase vent tube. And a lot of people say do that before you put everything in place. But I found it really isn't that hard to get to it from the back side. So I found that it made it easier to line the airbox up to not have that on there while you're lining it up, and then just grab it at the last step. This Harbor Freight hydraulic table really was a lifesaver for working on this thing. I could roll my little stool up to it and work on it with no problem. This kit ended up coming also with a new spark plug, and looking at everything else, I figured what the heck, might as well throw it in there. So I put a new spark plug in it as well. Since all the gas drained out of it anyway, I now know that it for sure has good fresh gas that also has stable in it. What I expected 2 days ago. Oh well. So I bought a gasket kit. It was like 10 bucks for the gasket kit, and I cleaned the carburetor about 3 times and didn't have any luck with it. Put an $18 carb from Amazon on it, and she's running like new. All right, well, if you got anything out of this video, give us a thumbs up. It absolutely helps the channel. And we invite you to subscribe and see more. The main lesson in this is don't start doubting yourself if you don't exceed at first. You know, they're not complicated machines. As Terrell says, it ain't the space shuttle. So if you've cleaned your carburetor and it doesn't run right, don't waste any more time on it. Just get a new carb. I think if I was running an actual shop, I wouldn't even clean them at all. I would go straight to a new carb. But your miles may vary. Have a good one and be safe.